Those of you that truly believe you have seen a cryptid, Bigfoot, Jersey Devil, etc., what's your story? Here's mine. This was back in the late 90s when myself and two of my friends were staying at their vacation home down on one of the local rivers. The house, think 3 small bedrooms, a sitting room kitchen, and a small external bathroom, is on a privately owned island, not theirs, which is used for cattle grazing and is about 3 to 4 sq miles in area. It is accessible by only one dirt road, which takes all of about 30 minutes to travel down, as it bends and winds through dense cypress swamps, full of alligators, and marsh plains. Along the road, there is one other house, just as you get onto the island, which has long been abandoned. This old 2-story plantation-style home was supposedly abandoned when the owners, a married couple, child suffered a fatal accident and they couldn't stand being there anymore. Aside from my friend's house, the cattle farmer's home, and one other vacation home, the abandoned property is the only other structure. Well, my friends and I were out on the dock doing some night fishing, trying to land a shark or something to throw on the grill, but we hadn't had much luck. The river was as smooth as glass, which was really unusual because of where the dock is. The current there is usually very strong, even during the tide shift. We sat and chatted, waiting for a bite, up until about 11 p.m, then off to our right, towards the coast, we heard a loud tone, or wail, which sounded like a mix between a ship's horn and maybe a wolf howl or something similar. An important note, the island is, by car, nearly an hour from deep water access and probably more from actual ocean, so the likelihood that the sound was a large ship is low. So anyway, we are startled by the sound, and even my friend, who had been spending his summers there since he was in diapers, had never heard the noise before and was bothered by it. So we decide to pack it in, since we weren't catching anything anyway and had nearly gotten all our equipment back to the house when my second friend heard it. Coming from down the road, back towards the island access, was what sounded either like a cat meowing or a child crying. We all stood in silence listening and trying to figure out what it was and where it was coming from. After listening for about 5 minutes, we decide to hop in the truck and drive down the road a ways with the windows down so we can try and find what was making the sound. What started out sounding like a cat was made clear as we got further up the road that was not the case. We could clearly hear a child and it sounded like it was saying help me. We drove very slowly calling out and we'd wait a few minutes and hear help me again, but always further up the road towards the swamps and the old abandoned house. We were seriously freaked out because if there was a kid out there, why would they be going away from our calls and light into the swamp? We nearly made it all the way to the abandoned house when the sound just stopped. We waited for nearly an hour and never heard it again. We marked it up as nerves and headed back to the river house, assuming it had been an animal after all and that we were probably just imagining it saying words. Well, after we had gotten back inside and settled in for the night, we started hearing it again, but as time passed, it came closer to us. We went out and called out again, and the sound would come closer. This went on for hours. Well, we decided we would try one more time to see if there was a kid lost or something. Again, important to note, we are miles from the next nearest people, and the noise sounded like a child, think 4-year-old, but once we got out in the truck again, the noise stopped. It's now nearly 3 in the morning, and we had been out in the sun fishing and swimming all day, so we were all tired, and after driving around a bit, calling out again, with no luck we decide to give up. We get back inside again and get into our beds. Then we hear it, clear as a bell, help me right outside the house, but it sounded so strange, like it was an echo, if that makes sense, like it was close but far away too. And like hell, if any of us were brave enough to go commando and leave the house, but we went out onto the porch, which was screened in for bugs, and listened. As soon as we went out, it would stop. Go back into the beds, it would call out again, but in a different location outside the house. It circled the house, calling, all night. We all slept in the living room, but to be honest, there wasn't a lot of sleeping happening. In the morning we went out and looked for tracks around the house, as the foundation is basically sand. There wasn't a mark, no prints, animal or otherwise, and to the best of my knowledge, this never happened again to my friend or any other visitors. To this day we don't know what we heard, but it's probably the most supernatural occurrence I've experienced.